Welcome back. It's the last lap of the show for today. Of course, there's an International Monetary Fund and World Bank meeting ongoing in Lima, Peru, and executives from both organizations, as well as delegates, have asked global policymakers to up their game in managing economic slowdowns. Of course, economic slowdown has hurt developing countries and contributed to the plunge in commodity prices, especially for Nigeria. But sub-Saharan African countries are confronted with the challenge of sustaining growth in the face of sharp drops in the price of oil. Now, let's turn our attention to other matters as well, still talking about business. The UK has continued to implore Nigeria to continue to maintain strong ties with London, the world's leading financial centre. And according to them, it's because London has plenty of experience that key emerging international markets such as Nigeria might find useful. In this interview with our foreign affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, the Lord Mayor of London, Alan Yarrow, said lack of sustainable infrastructure, a growing gap of skills acquisition and corruption prevents the economy from operating at optimal level, but that we can achieve more by harnessing public-private partnerships. Please listen.
Lord Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So this is your first time to Lagos and Nigeria. Tell us your impression of the country so far.
I've been very impressed by the energy, the excitement and the youth of Nigeria and desire to really succeed. However, that comes with some caveats, and that is that there are structural problems in the economy, which I'm sure everyone knows about. But the reality is that we are the leading experts in public-private partnerships, in developing more sophisticated ways of actually making the Naira go further in building our infrastructure. And before I go further than that, looking at what's been going on recently in why the City of London is so important to the financial services world, it's because people believe in the rule of law. They know that they've got a real objective, speedy, predictable legal system which enforces contract. And that is something which Nigeria's got to get focused on, because the recent movements have taken place of an alleged bribery and corruption situation on some individuals in London has sent a very important message out to the world that actually Nigeria is changing. It's looking at corruption, it's looking at those issues which are critically important for the development of the financial markets. That's point number one. However, once you've established that, and you've established a good dispute resolution process in Nigeria, there are some fundamental issues inside the economy which need to be resolved. That's the transport deficit. That's number one. Secondly, the power deficit. Here's a country with hydroelectric power. It's got effectively got a lot of gas. It's got a lot of oil. Why are we having blackouts? And that's an interesting question, and that's got to be sorted out. And then the skills gap. Lots of young people coming through now. Average age of 19. It's extraordinary. 290 people. The real driver there is demographics and the economy. And we want to support Nigeria going through this evolution, and we think we can.
London's infrastructure, you say, has been built mainly by public-private partnership. Lagos is almost like London, just as busy and as commercial. How can Lagos also harness public-private partnership for economic developments and the development of infrastructure?
Well, I think this again comes down to economic structuring. There's got to be a sensible economic plan put in place. Things have got to have a logical pattern to them. You can't do things back to front. You can't. At the moment, there seems to be some relatively short-term policies being put in place. I think it's pivotal as to who the next finance minister is, put it bluntly. That he or she, whoever it's going to be, is going to have to be someone who understands the economic need of the country and is also able to articulate the requirement to the international financial world. Just remember that over the next 40 years, there's going to be more money spent globally on infrastructure than has been in the last 4,000 years. But there's going to be huge competition for that international dollar, that international renminbi, that international euro. It's not going to be something that's naturally going to come Nigeria's way. So Nigeria's got to look like an attractive place to invest for that money. And that's what's going to have to happen. If we want to get that money invested in this country to move it forward, it's got to look attractive.
Nigeria's economy is largely dependent on oil, and we've been working towards diversifying desperately, actually. What more can we do?
Well, I think, again, this is the other fascinating thing, is that look back 30, 40 years ago, this country was self-sufficient in its own agricultural goods. But something's happened in the last 30 or 40 years where that has just completely diminished. And We had a great cocoa business, you had a lot of palm oil. It's about looking at sustainability. All the big companies today in the West look at sustainability as a major investment of their future supply of raw material. They will be ideal partners to reinvigorate what I describe as being the alternative economy, which is away from oil. Oil, in a way, is a curse. It's taken people's eye off the ball. And we now need to get back to basics of actually building out processes and building out the economy on a far broader scale for Nigeria.
You also talk about Britain supporting Nigeria in its fight against corruption. What more is Britain doing in this regard?
The UK anti-crime and anti-fraud agencies are well entrenched here in Nigeria, working with the authorities here to try and establish the source of funds and where the funds have gone to. We will work very closely with the Nigerian government to make sure that those monies are returned had they been actually acquired fraudulently. We've got no desire, effectively, to do anything else but actually make sure that the markets are clean. We do 44% of the foreign exchange turnover of the world. We need clean markets. We need to be seen to be enforcing those very things I've just been saying about the rule of law. And we are judged. The City of London is judged by its enforcement processes. So we will work with government, we will work with people to make sure that those flows are legal. And if they aren't, we'll find them and return them.
I know that one of the reasons you're here is also to encourage businesses in Nigeria to also come over to do business in London. Now, to many people, you're talking to the big boys. How can you encourage local and smaller businesses to also make that move?
Well, I'm very interested in small business. I have a fascination for small businesses. And I was talking just the other day to the central bank governor about one of the most critical points is leadership. We've seen leadership in anti-corruption. We now need leadership on paying invoices on time. And the government is probably in a position where they should lead, and they should turn around to businesses in the country and say, right, we are going to undertake to pay businesses on time within 30 days, whatever the agreed invoice period is, and we therefore expect you to do the same. And that starts to put money into the SME sector. What tends to happen is big companies use the SMEs as a way of banking. They delay payment, starve them with cash, and they can't evolve properly. And it's that evolution of cash flow which is critical to small companies. They don't have the same access to bank finance as big companies do. And that has to be used as a way of actually stimulating the SME sector.
And finally, last year, Britain became the first country outside the Islamic world to issue a sovereign sukuk. Tell us how that's coming along.
Well, we are the largest non-Muslim centre for Islamic finance. I was in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi and Qatar during the oil price crash. And I said to them very clearly, I said, you know, this is an interesting period of time for you. And I heard them say 6 times the curse of oil. They have suffered the same thing that Nigeria has. The oil was too attractive, it stopped from diversifying their economy. But they also didn't, I might point out, use the debt markets to raise money. And I said, you ought to go to your bank manager when you don't need the money rather than when you do, because he'll give it to you when you don't need it. And he's more reluctant when you do need it. And they have now issued something like 24 billion out of the Gulf of sukuk, Islamic finance. This is now increasing the amount of flow that's coming through in Islamic finance. And it's always been the fact that Islamic finance has been marginally more expensive than traditional Western finance. But that's a function of size and volume. And now we're beginning to see volume grow. I think Islamic finance will be a very important point going forward. And particularly for Nigeria, it's all about inclusion. You know, the north of your country needs to be included in the financial sector. And therefore Islamic finance will be much more popular in the north of the country, I suspect. But if you're raising money as a country, you want to go to all sources of finance, because you want to have renminbi, Chinese, you want to have Islamic, you want to have traditional Western, you don't want to foreclose any opportunity of raising your money from those various sectors. So you need to understand how those financial products need to work.
Lord Mayor, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you very much.
Well, the Lord Mayor of London, Alan Yaro, there with our Channels TV correspondent, Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amarachi Obani, giving us his thoughts on how Nigeria can best boost its economy, and of course talking about diversifying away from oil. A lot of conversation have been on with regards to diversifying away from oil, and it is an interesting time for everybody to put on their thinking cap, and he made a lot of points with regards to this area, particularly focusing on also developing the small and medium scale enterprises. Go back to the basics is what he's been saying, and also with regards to corruption, the authorities are partnering, the UK authorities are partnering with Nigeria to ensure that they achieve so much in that regard as well. But that's the program for today. Many thanks for spending time with us. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Have a profitable day and enjoy your weekend.